Go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/online therapy to get 20% off your first month of cognitive behavioural therapy, with weekly sessions online with a therapist, in addition to worksheets, a journal, meditation and yoga videos, and unlimited messaging. There's strong evidence that CBT can help people who hoard, and accessing therapy online can be affordable and accessible. Find out more and get your discount at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/online therapy.
Here's a cool fact. A crocodile can't stick out its tongue. Another cool fact, you can get short-term health insurance for a month or just under a year in some states. United Healthcare short-term insurance plans are designed for people who are between jobs, coming off their parents' plan, or turning a side hustle into a full-time gig. Underwritten by Golden Rule Insurance Company, they offer flexible, budget-friendly coverage with access to a nationwide network of doctors and hospitals. Get more cool facts about United Healthcare short-term plans at uh1.com.
Wow!
Nice!
Yeah!
What you're hearing are the sounds of people everywhere putting on Bombas socks, underwear, and T-shirts made from absurdly soft materials that feel like plush clouds. Yeah, that plush. And the best part? For every item you purchase, Bombas donates another to someone facing homelessness.
Bombas. Big comfort for everyone. Go to bombas.com/ACAST and use code ACAST for 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/ACAST. Code ACAST.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Welcome to the Overcome Compulsive Hoarding with That Hoarder podcast. I am drowning in stuff and trying to find a way out. Listen as I explore the issues and delve deep as somebody profoundly affected by hoarding disorder. Find out more, including links to subscribe to the podcast and all of my social media at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. Finally, I am not a doctor. I am just a hoarder doing her best. So do seek professional support if and when you need it. Hey, how are you? I am all right. I have for you today a success of the week and a weird dilemma of the week. And then I am going to talk about how, much as we might want to, we can't save the world by ethically shopping. And then I have a shout out to a podcast that included a great tip about making decisions. So buckle up and let's talk. My success of the week is that I have a chopping board in the kitchen that is just too big for the space I usually chop in. And it's a pain every time. It's kind of overhanging the table and just doesn't work. And so I thought, this is ridiculous. I need a small chopping board. I need to get one that fits this space nicely. And so I added it to my shopping list. And next time I was in the supermarket, I looked at their kitchen stuff and they did have small chopping boards, but only in a bundle of 3 chopping boards with like a small, a medium and a large. And these were not expensive. And I thought, I could buy all 3. I could buy this bundle of 3 because I need the small one and it's not much more than I was imagining I would have paid for one. But this is the success of the week. And so what happened was I then thought, yeah, but you don't need a medium-sized chopping board and a large chopping board as well as the small chopping board. You're only after a small chopping board. And I managed to not buy the set of 3, of which definitely the large and probably the medium would never have been used. So I was really proud of myself, and I am going to wait until I spot a small chopping board on its own to invest in one. My weird dilemma of the week was that I lost my ruler. This was a ruler I'd had for years, very, very basic, probably cost me 30 pence 10 years ago, just a plastic 30 centimetre ruler. And it was one of those that, like when I was at school, like said shatterproof on. I don't think the design's changed in 30 years, but I lost it. And it's quite handy to have one around. And so I thought, well, it's, no huge deal. I'll get a new one. It won't be a big expense. And I could do with having one. So I also added that to my shopping list. And it wasn't anything urgent. So I wasn't tempted to order online or anything. And so in the time between losing it and adding it to my shopping list and then going to the shop, I did eventually find the ruler. So I thought, great. But because I'd lost the ruler temporarily for about a week, that fear of scarcity had set in. My brain had already gone to, yeah, but you need a ruler. You need a ruler. You don't have a ruler. This is somehow dangerous. To your safety and security, you need a ruler. And so my initial response to finding it was, well, I won't take it off the shopping list because they're really cheap. So I'll probably get another one anyway, so that next time I lose it, I've got a spare. And I knew this wasn't great logic. I knew this was very much hoarder logic. I knew it was fueled by my over-exaggerated response to a sense of scarcity. But I kept kind of rationalising it by going, it's cheap, they don't take up much space, it'll be fine, get a spare. But I also then kept reminding myself that I don't often lose this ruler because it does have a very specific place to live. And so I do normally know where it is, and that's why I've had it for so long, is because it's one of the things in my house, there aren't a load, that have a proper space that I respect on an ongoing basis. But normally it works. And so, but also that if I did get a spare and lost the original, would I be able to find the spare? That whole thing about we buy spares or we keep things in case we need them in the future. And then because we've got so much stuff, if we do need them in the future, we've no idea where they are, or they've got broken in the meantime. And so I was having a really, really weird dilemma about whether to get a spare ruler. And the good news is I did not. I figured that if I lost my original ruler again, I could still replace it. It wouldn't be urgent, so it wouldn't be like running out of, painkillers when you're in a lot of pain. There are a few ruler-related emergencies. And also just being aware that, okay, this is that scarcity thing, and okay, this is that wanting to insure myself against a future without rulers thing, and all of that. And also that I wouldn't know where it was if I did lose the original, let's face it. So yeah, I did not buy a second ruler to back up the first. But hoarders' brains, we're weird, aren't we? And I was going to say in the best possible way. Not when it manifests like this. It's not the best. But we're getting through. So let's talk about how ethical shopping will not save the world. When I was probably 16, I heard things about a multinational company doing some activities that were having negative impacts. And this company was Nestle. And I joined in an international boycott that was very big at the time and still is amongst many. I stopped eating Nestle food. I had Nestle nothing for years and years and years and years. And it felt important to me. And also, I didn't want to give my money to a company that was doing something I believed to be unethical or damaging. And it was at that point in my life that I started learning about the concept of when you spend money, your pound or your dollar or your euro is like a vote. So if you have £10, the companies you give your money to, you're voting for them or you're voting against the ones you don't give your money to. And it's a way of kind of symbolising what you approve of and what you want to support and what you disapprove of and what you don't want to support. And there is a lot of truth in that, but it embedded something in me that I have come to realise has had quite kind of tricky consequences for my attitude to shopping when it's something I can consider ethical shopping. So while we can definitely make positive and conscious choices when we're shopping, I think there are a lot of ways in which society and capitalism and marketing and consumer culture convinces us that spending money on stuff can be a form of activism, a form of getting the world we want, whether that is a more environmentally conscious world, whether it is a world that's more supportive to your local area and local neighbours. So campaigns like Shop Local, of course, is a good principle. It's great to buy from local businesses. It's great to support independent businesses in your area rather than support the giant multinationals that don't care whether the area you live in is nice or not. But we can see shop local campaigns or shop independent campaigns and start to think that if we buy something but it's from a local business, then that somehow cancels out the negative consequences of buying something. And that is twofold. One is that those products still have an impact. And the other is that it results in clutter that contributes to your hoard. But we can think, yeah, but that woman down the road made this. It's a good thing to buy it. But she still made it from stuff, and it still ends up as stuff in your home. Another way that we think we can save the world by shopping is by shopping in charity shops. Because I've talked many times about how I feel great about shopping in charity shops because I'm supporting a charity, I'm supporting recycling, all of those good feelings. And yes, those things are true. But it is also true that when I let myself shop in a charity shop, I end up with way more clutter than I need. And someone else can't buy the things that I did buy. There's another way that we start to believe we can kind of create change through our purchases is if we find ourselves buying something in order to encourage the shop to keep stocking it. I know that sounds a bit complicated, but I had a bit of a realization in a supermarket a few weeks ago when I saw that they were stocking like tablets that you can dissolve in water and put in a foaming soap dispenser. And I have a foaming soap dispenser that I like a lot because I like liquid soap, but was very conscious of the plastic because it's a lot harder to get liquid soap I think it's virtually impossible to get liquid soap in a plastic-free form. But I, ages ago, got a foaming soap dispenser, so that just uses a fraction of the soap. And then I discovered that you can get these tablets that use no plastic at all, and you drop the tablets in the water and then it creates foaming soap when you use the dispenser. This is all very complicated. Anyway, I saw that the shop I was in was selling tablets for foaming soap dispensers, and I had a very clear thought process that went, oh, they look nice. No, I've got tablets for the soap dispenser. But then I went to, yeah, but if you buy them, then the shop will know there's a demand for them and will keep stocking them. If you don't buy them, the shop might stop stocking them because they think, okay, nobody has a foaming soap dispenser and wants these. And I realised in the moment that that's, for someone like me who has like a strong sense of what I believe to be right, that's a strong motivator. And yet it's really flawed in a number of ways. Like me buying one pack of soap tablets won't push the dial at that shop at all. But also it's not my individual responsibility to get a supermarket chain to continue stocking something or not. That's just too much to ask of one person and one purchase. Another thing that can make us think we're saving the earth by making a purchase is if we believe that by buying this thing we're saving something from going to landfill. So often this will be around things like upcycled products. I once had a notebook when the cover was made from like reclaimed car tyres, or pens made from recycled plastic, or somebody who takes an old bit of furniture and redoes it so it's comfy and nice and pretty. And that might all be activity that we support, but we take on a personal, I must buy this so that those things don't end up in landfill, when it really individualizes responsibility for the problem. It makes it my responsibility, not anything kind of regulatory or governmental, but also it's yet more stuff that ends up in our homes. And probably one of the obvious ways that we believe that buying certain things can save the earth is when it's eco products, when something makes claims of environmental friendliness. We want to buy that because we want the world to be a nicer place. And then the final example I thought of ways that we believe that our shopping can change the world is when we buy items that serve to display or share our beliefs or values. I might think I need to buy a big pride flag to show that I am gay and welcoming to gay people, and I need that t-shirt with a tree on it to show that I am environmentally conscious, or I need that baseball cap with a political message on to spread the word about my campaign. And we put the responsibility of sharing that message or changing that thing onto an item of merchandise that can be bought and sold, and that, as with everything else, can just end up being one more piece of clutter in our homes. And on the Earth's surface. So I'm going to look into some of the ways that this kind of thinking is flawed, basically. It's not that we can't make a positive impact with our purchases. It's that the idea that we can save the world by shopping is not accurate, and it's not kind to ourselves, even if it was kind to the earth, which, as I will go into, it's not. So probably the most well-known reason that people might believe they're saving the world by acquiring stuff but actually aren't is what's known as greenwashing. Greenwashing is when a company markets or promotes products as being environmentally friendly or socially responsible, but that doesn't actually represent the reality. And so by buying those things, there just might not be a positive impact to the things we think there will be. I mean, years ago, say I was buying washing powder, I would look at the overwhelming number of washing powders available, and if one had like a tree on the packaging, I would think, oh, that one's clearly eco-friendly, and buy that. Or if something had a breast cancer ribbon on it, I would think, oh, well, they clearly donate to a good cause if I buy this washing powder. I assumed there must be rules around that kind of thing. I assumed that for a product to call itself natural, for instance, they had to fulfill legal regulatory criteria. And it's just not necessarily the case. Companies know that people are increasingly likely to buy products that have some kind of positive impact on the world around them. But what they might not tell us is that the washing powder with the pink ribbon on actually donates half a penny for every £10 somebody spends. And you'll be much better off buying a generic washing powder and giving the difference directly to a cancer charity if that's what your motivation is. So when a company wants to appeal to consumers with a particular political outlook or a particular eco-consciousness, they can mislead us and let us live in the happy buzz of thinking we've done something right, but actually we haven't. Now, I read so many articles for this episode, partly because it's a really fascinating area, but also quite alarming. So one of the things I found out was that green household products, like cleaning products, are just not necessarily less toxic than non-green ones. Some of them are even more toxic than household products that are not marketed as green. And there was a particularly fascinating and concerning, to be honest, article in the Stanford Social Innovation Review, which I will link to in the show notes at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk, but it's called There's No Such Thing as a Green Product by Trevor Zink and Roland Geyer. And they say that even when a product is more green, they say the environmental benefits of green products are not that they somehow fix the environment or have zero impact, but rather that their environmental impacts are less than those of similar products. So if something is recycled, that might have less impact than a non-recycled version, but it doesn't have no impact. And they also talk about it's not just the product itself, but the effect it has on, in the short term, medium term, long term, in extraction, in disposal, but also the effects it has on other people. So they talk about recycled metal. And sure enough, creating recycled metal uses fewer resources than sourcing it new. But they say the scrap metal markets, argues the industry, are constrained by supply rather than demand. Therefore, increasing the recycled content in your product will just force someone else to use primary metal instead, because there's not enough scrap supply for both of you. And I think that sometimes with charity shops as well. If I buy 2 pairs of jeans in my size and they were the last 2 pairs of jeans in my size, and somebody else is my size and wanted some jeans, they can't get them in a charity shop and may end up having to get them new. So it's not that my decisions have no consequences on other people's purchasing decisions. And the examples of things that we think are more environmentally friendly but actually aren't go on and on. So another article was about electric cars, which obviously produce, they don't burn petrol and release smoke into the air, which is great. And so we all go, yay, electric cars are the future of green living. But this article talks about the batteries in electric cars and how they talked about 2 different electric cars, the Nissan Leaf and the Tesla Model S, and how by the time the Nissan Leaf battery is produced, it has already released roughly 5 tons of CO2 into the air before it is even purchased. The Tesla battery has released 15 to 20 tons of CO2 before anybody's even bought the car. So it's another of those things where we can trick ourselves into feeling like, if I buy this, it will do the world good. But it's all a balancing act. And I'm not saying don't get an electric car, but also don't be tricked into thinking it's the answer to everything, or indeed that you have a responsibility to do it, especially if you can't really afford it or anything like that. Another example this article gave was about fabric created from bamboo, which I've certainly seen marketed as very, very environmentally friendly on the basis that the bamboo plant grows really fast and it doesn't require fertilizers and pesticides. So it's a lot more renewable and does a lot less damage to the soil. And I've seen all kinds of fabric items made of bamboo marketed in that way. And it's true, none of that is incorrect. But to convert bamboo into fabric takes a lot more chemicals, a lot more work than cotton. And so again, it's not that bamboo isn't a green option. It's that if we are saying to ourselves, I have a responsibility to buy that bamboo backpack because that will save the world, it's just not that simple. Another reason that shopping to save the world is not the way forward is that even when consumerism is super eco-conscious, resources are still consumed, and that consumption of resources can still contribute to environmental damage. So things still have to be manufactured, they still have to be transported, they still at some point have to be disposed of. And because we keep buying, we create this culture of everything being, there's always more, kind of throwaway. I feel weird calling it a throwaway culture on a hoarding podcast. Sorry, that's really thrown me. A throwaway wider culture, and kind of almost worse than that in our homes is a non-throwaway culture in the microcosm of our home as part of a wider throwaway culture, where because products are replaced so often and fashions change, resources continue to be wasted and used up and depleted. And packaging is such an issue. Herbal shampoo, for instance, still comes in a plastic bottle. Organic tea bags still are in tin or in cardboard but wrapped in plastic. And if you are vegan, or if you avoid dairy, or if you just like different types of milk, almond milk production uses around 17 times more water per litre than cow milk production. So there is always still resource extraction that is required when we consume things, even if we get them secondhand, because as I said earlier, if you get that secondhand kitchen table, somebody else who still needs a kitchen table may end up having to get a new one. And as I will no doubt say multiple times in this episode, this is not to say that there's no point in trying to do better socially, environmentally, personally, and that if you really, really do need to buy something, we can choose what seems like the greenest option possible. That is true. What I'm talking about today is a lot more about kind of thoughtless consumption or compulsive consumption or just unnecessary consumption. You know, you will need laundry detergent at some point, most likely. It's not that you can never buy the things you need, and it's not that you can't look at the laundry detergent options in front of you and try and make an informed choice. That is all good. That is all positive and what we need to be doing. But if you are stocking up on laundry detergent when you know you already have multiple kilos at home, that's when it's a lot more problematic. Another reason shopping won't save the world is because acquiring stuff is all about our individual actions, and what is actually needed to make significant global change is collective action, and usually that involves societal change and changes within companies that are usually driven by either consumer demand or more often government regulation. Because I boycotted Nestle for about 15 years before I thought about it and realised they were still doing the practice I had opposed 15 years ago, and they were still doing the practice that I and thousands of other people had stopped buying their products about, and that me not buying their stuff was not changing the way they acted, because they presumably were making more money from what I considered to be unethical practice than they were losing from people boycotting them. Now, I still only rarely buy Nestle products. I still don't feel great giving them my money. However, maybe twice a year, I do have a chunky Kit Kat because they're just great. But, you know, I still make a positive choice most of the time to avoid Nestle where that's practical. And that's entirely my right to do so. But I have also come to terms with the fact that what I do in one shopping trip is not what is going to change the world. It made me think about, in the 90s, the big environmental threat at the time was the hole in the ozone layer. People my age will remember the fear about this growing hole in the ozone layer. And then there was a discovery that what was causing or worsening this problem was something called CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, that were in a lot of aerosol products. So hairsprays and deodorants and anything that's sprayed contained CFCs. And when that became clear, some companies started making some like token efforts to have alternatives to CFCs. So there was a time when, in order to spray anything, those of us who were conscious of the issue and trying to avoid CFCs could get pump action hairspray. They were days of big hairspray, were the 90s. And so there was some change because there was some consumer demand for CFC-free sprays. But what actually changed the landscape and literally changed the hole in the ozone layer and means that young people have no idea what we're talking about when we mention the hole in the ozone layer was that laws came in banning products with CFCs. That's what actually changed the behaviours of the corporations that were actually selling the stuff that we were all using that was causing this giant issue. Similarly, I remember when there was the big switch to unleaded petrol, because lead is a terrible thing to be breathing in and to be surrounding us. But it took a change in the law for that to be fully implemented. And while individual action is not pointless, it's not pointless. We can all take positive steps that we try and hope will make our little corner of the world a bit better. If we see it as our individual responsibility, then that takes the responsibility off the people who can actually make substantive change on these issues, whether that's Nestle, whether that's the British government, I don't know, all of these giant bodies that can actually shift the dial rather than just nudge it a little bit like we can. Because we have to see all of these, whether it's social issues, whether it's environmental stuff, as kind of systemic. They are not simple to solve. They're not. There are many cleverer people than I working on it. And there are many different opinions on what's needed. But because these things are all interconnected, like climate change is connected to health. Health is connected to poverty. Poverty is connected to inequality. Inequality is connected to climate change. It all ties together. Me buying this dishwasher powder because it's got a green leaf on the front as opposed to that dishwasher powder that's in yellow packaging doesn't shift any dials. But we do know that me buying unnecessarily is a bit more plastic in the landfill, or it's a bit more plastic in my home when I already am literally overflowing with stuff. So it has a demonstrable negative effect on my individual life, and that is unnecessary purchases. And it has a small demonstrable effect on the universe around me. But I can't fix those problems by buying more. Another issue with why we have to think beyond shopping in terms of trying to create a better world is that buying green can make us complacent. Sharon Begley wrote for Newsweek, "The problem with the emphasis on changing individual behaviour is this. It makes too many of us believe that we have done our part." And she talks about a study about how some volunteers bought some green products as part of a study and afterwards tended to act less virtuously and in a less good for humanity way, as if, and she said, they seemed to believe, perhaps unconsciously, that they had fulfilled their virtue quota for the day. And that's not what we want. If we believe that we've done our part because we bought from that woman who's opened a local business, then that stops us looking for what we can do that might have a more impactful change. If we really, really want to create change, if we believe that we've done that by shopping, then we stop looking at things that might be real solutions. I did an episode a while ago about the 5 R's, and that was talking about how even when we might buy something and think, oh, well, it's recyclable, but how actually recycling is a lot less preferable to reducing our consumption and reusing things and all of there's a hierarchy in what's actually helpful. And it's by consuming less, even if it's less quote unquote good things, that makes the mark we might want to actually see in the world. It doesn't matter to the supermarket chain really whether or not I bought 1 packet of foaming soap dispenser tablets. It matters to the state of my bathroom. But if I had bought those things thinking this will encourage them to keep stocking these, that product still had to be manufactured and made and transported and stored. And we just don't have an obligation to save the world to our own detriment. So even if the problems above that I've mentioned didn't exist, buying the thing is not something we should do if the thing piles up and makes our home even more unmanageable. Even if shopping could save the world, then if shopping would fill your home up and leave you living in a distressing state, you still shouldn't do it. Because while conscious consumers can have a positive impact, they can't save the world on their own, and they rarely have a net positive impact. There's always some payoff. Jenna Sowers said, I have yet to see any evidence that climate change is a problem we can shop our way out of. And if you're listening and climate change isn't your concern, we also can't shop our way out of racism or inequality or homophobia. George Monbiot, who is an environmental campaigner, said, we are drowning in a tide of eco-junk. The organic cotton shopping bags are piling up as fast as the plastic ones. There is a lot of feel-good consumerism going on that makes people feel better, but doesn't really make any difference to the environment. We have to stop pretending that we can do this by buying a better brand of biscuit. Clover Stroud said in the Times, rather than increasing the quality of our shopping, we need to radically reduce the quantity. And that's the core of it. When you need to acquire stuff, doing it in the greenest or most ethical way, or the way that lines up with your values, is great. But the message from all of this is that we have to acquire less. And that helps us as hoarders significantly. But it makes it harder for us too, because as Jan and I talked about in episode 89, people who hoard are more likely to feel a strong responsibility to environmentalism and ethics. So I do know that it's not just me who struggles to know what's best in terms of ethical purchasing and who wants to do well in that respect. So I've really appreciated the research I've done for this episode, because it's helped me to feel a lot clearer with myself that if I use, well, it's a local business, or it's biodegradable, or it comes in paper packaging as an excuse to buy something, that just doesn't cut it much as I might want it to. I make this podcast because I think it's important. I started it as an outlet for myself, but it's become much more than that. And I hear from people all the time about how listening to me talk about my experience and interview specialists and experts is helping them. Hearing those stories makes the time and cost absolutely worth it. But if you want to help to ensure that the future of the podcast is sustainable, you can donate to help with costs. To send a one-off or recurring donation, just go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/donate. Thank you.
Flexibility is great. That's why there's yoga. Flexibility for your insurance coverage is great too. That's why there's United Healthcare Insurance Plans. Underwritten by Golden Rule Insurance Company, United Healthcare Insurance Plans offer flexible, budget-friendly coverage for medical, vision, dental, and more. One of these plans may be right for you if you're, say, between jobs, coming off your parents' plan, turning a side hustle into a full hustle, or even missed open enrollment. Want more flexibility? Find out more about United Healthcare Insurance Plans at uh1.com.
With LinkedIn Jobs, we tap into a network of more than 1 billion professionals to help you find quality professionals quickly and easily for any role you need. Marketing wizards? Found them.
Software engineers?
Found. That project manager I could never seem to hire? And found. LinkedIn Jobs quickly matches your roles with candidates with the right skills and experience. In fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Post your first job for free and get started at linkedin.com/spoken. That's linkedin.com/spoken. Terms and conditions apply.
So shout out this week to a podcast called Creative Pep Talk, which I will link to, and they are talking with guest Lizzie Stewart about making choices, and this is some good advice, especially if you get overwhelmed by choice. Have a listen.
I think often about my sister was trying on wedding dresses. We went to like fancy wedding dress place so that she could try on some really fancy dresses, so that then we could go to a cheaper place and find a cheaper dress. It was a bit like the fancy one that she'd seen. Yeah. We know how this works. So we were in this fancy dress store, and this the woman who was helping her look at these dresses said you should only ever be choosing between two things. Two, in this instance, dresses. So if you try on 3 dresses, whittle it down to 2, then you're allowed to try on another one. And then you can make your choice again between those 3, but get them down to 2. And so the idea, of limiting your own choice, obviously in the broadest sense within your life, you don't want to limit your choice too much, but choice can be paralyzing. So this idea that that you should only really be choosing between 2 things in certain instances would, I think, I totally apply it when I'm teaching. So I teach on a children's book illustration course, and sometimes a student will come in and they've done a double spread or an illustration 10 different ways, and you have to be like, you have to get this down to 2 and then we can talk. I can't, we can't look at 10 images. It's too much. You've gone too far. So I think about wedding dresses a lot, which is weird.
Continue. Sorry.
No. That's the end of my thought. I think
I loved that. That's a really powerful thought, because, it makes me wonder if it instantly puts me into that stupid framework of like, are we in a simulation? Because that very much sounds like binary. Our brain can handle these, a 0 or a 1. Which is it? Like, that's all we got. Yeah. But truthfully, I think that there's that. I love this idea of like, get it down to 2 wedding dresses, because one thing that happens there that I think is cool is, as you're whittling down the 10, you don't have to be precious, because you can be precious about 2. And then once you get there, then you can start really being, applying an editor's mind and weighing it up. That's a great trick.
Totally. And then like, if you've got 10 things, you can't make a detailed analysis of what is working and not working in each one of those things. Or if you've got 10 dresses, you can't work out, I like the sleeves on that one and the, I don't know, whatever else is on wedding dresses. Not a wedding person, weirdly. I don't know why I've clung on to this metaphor. But whereas when there's two, it doesn't, if you have to sit with it for a couple of days, maybe that's fine, but you're not like creating this fog of stuff.
Yeah.
You've sort of worked to, even if you started out with 10 images, you're like, if you're always deciding between two of them, like you're making like a fantasy football league or something where you're like separate, pitting them against each other, you will always get down to two. Yeah. I don't know how we got onto this, but I'm glad it feels relevant and useful.
I love it. I think it's
it's not just in my brain; it's in yours.
Well, first of all, it's funny that there's two artists and our analogies are wedding dresses and fantasy football, but that's fine. that's totally fine. We'll just set that on the shelf, but that's great. But the reason I think it's so relevant is, I've been doing this show for 9 years or whatever it is, and one of the things that comes up over and over and over in my own practice and the other practice of other people I chat with is just the idea that if your brain is kind of naturally a divergent thinker, you're going to get into this scenario where you're incredible at thinking up new options, which is great, and maybe not so good at choosing them. And so that little trick that you shared, I think is a potential framework for sorting through the billions of options that creators cook up for themselves.
And I think, makes sense to me. All right. Thank you for listening, and I will speak to you next time. Thank you for listening to the Overcome Compulsive Hoarding with That Hoarder podcast. You can find more online at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. You can find me on Twitter at That Hoarder and on Facebook at Overcome Compulsive Hoarding with That Hoarder. To find out more about how you can support the podcast and the overall project, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support and do subscribe to the podcast to make sure you don't miss any future episodes. There may be links in this podcast that earn me money. This doesn't come at any extra cost to you if you ever make a purchase through the links, and it helps to support the future of the podcast.
1-800-Flowers.com is more than your birthday, anniversary, or just because gift-giving destination. We put our hearts into everything we do to help you celebrate all life's special occasions with friends and family. From our farmers and bakers, florists and makers, everything from 1-800-Flowers is made with love every step of the way, because we know that nothing is more important than delivering a smile. To learn more, visit 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.
Hey everyone, Craig Robinson here. I want you to check out the Ways to Win podcast, brought to you by Ford and the new 2024 Ford F-150 truck. On Ways to Win, Coach Cal and I will discuss leadership lessons we've learned. We know all about the days spent perfecting your craft outside of the limelight and have knowledge to share about how strength, inspiration, encouragement, and adaptability are the key ingredients to drive toward your dreams. And those same ingredients can be found in the new 2024 Ford F-150 truck. So check out my podcast, Ways to Win, and also check out the new 2024 Ford F-150 truck. Learn more at Ford.com. Built Ford tough, built Ford proud.